We are ready to go. Okay, let's start. Let's start here instead of starting from there.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome back to a spectacular moment in time. We are ready to tackle another episode of the High Energy Judaism podcast. We are excited, and we are going to get into another section of the Torah and another section of Judaism. This is going to be very exciting and very fun. And the question of the day is, where are we going with this? This is an interesting week.
What makes it interesting?
Because I think we're continuing our journey in the stuff that nobody really has heard so much about, enough about, and that's why it makes it so interesting.
So this is going back to our first episode where we said that like one of our reasons for doing this in the first place is because there are the top tier stories that everyone knows: Mount Sinai, the burning bush, Exodus, and
Splitting of the sea,
and Sefer Bamidbar, or Numbers in English, is really where some incredible stories that get brushed because they sit in the shadow of these incredible other stories that are the mainstream.
And I think that what's interesting about them also is they have a lot of the stories have a lot of lessons and teachings built into them, which is fascinating. And lessons that we sometimes we know the lessons before we know the stories led to them, and sometimes vice versa. So we'll get into it. It'll be interesting. I did bring my chumash with me,
Lovely.
as is tradition. Ta-tam. Okay. The Torah portion we're going to be loosely based on and surrounding is the Torah portion of Korach.
Oh, okay. This is
Korach.
a good one. Okay.
A lot of interesting conversations. I'm going to try to keep it not too text-based, even though there can be a lot of going into the actual like nitty-gritty of the text.
Mm-hmm.
But the story itself is really radical.
I want to be that kid. Like I feel like being that kid in class is like, oh, I know what happens. Can I?
Yeah.
So Korach is I don't know if it's a false prophet or a rebellion leader, or maybe both, but he did some big no-nos in terms of trying to build a rebellion against Moshe and calling himself the new leader of the Jewish people. And what ends up happening is him and his entire family, except for like maybe a few who have famous descendants down the line, if I'm not mistaken. Like Mordechai is a Korach descendant? Not Mordechai?
So Korach was a Levi.
Okay.
He was a Levite. He was a cousin of Moshe.
Okay, so but what ends up happening is he and his entire family get swallowed by the ground.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. So which part is the most interesting part? First of all, the most interesting, I think, is that this is not a dated story. We technically don't know when it happened. Now, all of the commentaries have an opinion on this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, technically,
Perfect.
This Torah portion doesn't have a date. Last Torah portion, we ended off with the spies. We know when that happened. That happened right as the Jews were about to enter the land of Israel. God commands they're all going to die in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And they begin the journey of sitting in the desert doing we don't know what.
Mm-hmm.
Meditating, studying Torah, being spiritual and holy, hanging out with Moses and Aaron. It was very wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing else is recorded. The next dated story is the next week's episode, next week's Torah portion of Chukat,
Mm-hmm.
in which Aaron passes away. Miriam passes away, then Aaron passes away. Miriam is not it doesn't say when she passes away, date-wise, meaning it doesn't give it a year, I don't believe.
Mm-hmm.
With Aaron, it does. But anything that happens in between,
We don't know.
it could be any time.
Are there any commentaries who say that Korach's story happens completely out of order?
No.
Okay. So it does happen between where we leave off last Parsha and when we pick up when Aaron passes away.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
When I say pick up, I mean pick up in terms of like dating things.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And also all the most commentaries agree that it happens precisely where in the Torah where it's said.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning it's a result of the spies.
Okay.
Okay, well, we'll get into that. First, let's do the story, and then we can talk about dating.
Perfect.
Let's do it that way. What happens? Korach who is, it explicitly states he's from the children of Kahas.
So a near cousin, a first cousin of Moshe.
A first cousin of Moshe, yeah.
Or
First.
second cousin. First.
Yeah. And he rabble rouses the community along with Datan and Aviram, who are neighbors, and literal neighbors is in their camp was next door to Korach. They're the tribe of Ruvain. And also On ben Pelet, which is a random dude who fascinatingly shows up as a leader of the rabble rousers and disappears.
Okay.
The Medrash says how it happens. We'll get there in a moment. And then he confronts Moshe with these other three people, and then they also bring together 250 of the leaders of the Jewish people. And they confront Moshe, and they say, "Why are you raising yourself up over the Jewish people?" Moshe does not like it, obviously. He's like, "What are you talking about?" And basically, Moshe right away doesn't, he's very shaken by the whole thing.
Yeah.
And most commentaries say that Moshe basically says, I've been trying to protect you guys from being destroyed over and over and over. Every time that you do another thing, and it's another problem, I have less leverage.
Yeah.
Because the first time I tell God, if you do it, I'll wipe myself out. And God's like, don't do that, and I'll save you. The second time he says, don't do it, and God says, I'll just kill those who actually did the sin. It becomes very complicated every time. And here he goes to God, and he's like, what am I going to say this time?
And it's also clear to us by this point, from last Parsha, that there's no ego involved. Moshe hears that other people are prophesizing. It's like, great, this is awesome. And so it's not a matter of the fact that there can be, if there was a worthy replacement for him, he'd probably be thrilled. He'd be like, yeah, someone better than me, please, by all means. But he clearly sees through this as just a...
Well, ever since the first day that he was got the job, he's always been saying somebody else.
Yeah.
The first day he says Aaron should be the one who runs the show.
Yeah.
God says no, it's going to have to be you. He's like, why not Aaron? Why not this? Why not that? So Moshe from day one never wanted to be in charge.
Yeah.
Korach comes and says, why are you in charge? Is not the entire nation. So the Medrash gives us a whole narrative, which is interesting. He brings he asks Moshe, what if we have a room that is full of Sidurim and Chumashim? What if it's a room full of holy books? Does it have to have a mezuzah on the door? A mezuzah is a scroll that has the name of God, has this for the portions of Shema. We see it in the Shema itself. It says, you should write them on the doorposts of your houses and on your gates. So it is very clear there's a mitzvah to have something. And our oral tradition tells us what that is. It's a scroll of parchment with the words of the Shema written on it very beautifully and clearly. You take that, you roll it up, and you put it on your doorpost, and you put it on the right side as you walk in. It's called a mezuzah. Unlike some people who say that the mezuzah is the case, and there's a mezuzah scroll on the inside. I'm very, very explicit.
The mezuzah is the scroll.
Is the scroll. You have a mezuzah case that goes on top of it.
That is the bite.
Right. In fact, if you go to Israel, and some gates you have where they dig out in the gate and they put the scroll directly into the stone and seal it up. So you don't even have to have a scroll, technically, a separate case.
Yeah.
Separate from the scroll, maybe for water protection, but not even like a real thing.
Now, it's a decoration.
Now that became the mezuzah, and everyone's like, the famous thing with the painters who come to the house and they're like, you're like, what are you gonna do about the Jewish stuff? Like, oh, we know how to do it. Don't worry about us. And you come back, a week later, like, what happened? Like, oh, we took them all off, and we knew how to do it so well. We threw out the instructions. It was fine. They put it on top. But Korach comes to Moshe and he says, if you have a room full of books, what do you do? Does it need to have a mezuzah? Moshe says, of course it does. Then he brings the 250 people with him, and they all are wearing tzitzit, which we spoke about last time.
Either last week or the week before.
Yeah. And he says, last time I think, and he says, if it's a tzitzit, if it's a garment that is fully blue, fully tchelet, does it have to have strings that have tchelet on them? And Moshe says, of course it does. It has to have the mitzvah. He says, it seems ridiculous. It was a way of creating this like framing of like, why do you think?
He's the strict.
If everyone here is if this room is holy, why do you have to have something special on the door? If the whole garment is holy, why do you have to have strings that are holy? Like the whole garment is this holy color. Is it not enough? And Moshe says no. You have to have
Rules are
the mitzvah. Rules are rules. The mitzvah is a mitzvah.
Yeah.
So Korach says, so if all the Jews are holy, why do you have a high priest? Which is funny because a little bit later, Moshe says, in responding to Korach, he says the exact words. Why do you want to have the priesthood as well? Which is strange because theoretically, in the beginning of the conversation of Moshe arguing with them, they're like, oh, everyone's equal, everyone's the same. And then Moshe comes in and says, why do you want to be the high priest? Why not? So suddenly it's like what Korach wants to be the high priest. Does he not want to be the high priest? It's kind of like Animal Farm, where everyone's equal. We're all equal. I want to be the most equal.
And to take that analogy further, and running the risk of being canceled. I'm okay being canceled. But I feel like that has a lot to do with like the extreme left-leaning people, financially, who preach like
Obvious.
communism, but they want to run the show in the commune.
Right. Everyone should listen to me because I have the best communistic way of thinking.
Yep.
Right. You say essentially like you can't. If you just say you're selfish, that's fine. We can all agree that someone is selfish and we're all selfish, and that you're the most selfish and you figured out you have the best talents. Essentially that's kind of the core of capitalism. It's like capitalism aligns with the most selfish desires of a person, and the system works because everyone's going to be the most selfish they can possibly be, and it works. Which is a whole separate conversation. Is there a moral underpinning for capitalism? We'll leave that for now. But it's interesting that Korach has this funny, weird thing where he's like, oh, we're all equal, and I also want to be the high priest. And so Moshe essentially says, this is not going to work, and I want we're going to make a test to see who's right. Your 250 people that love you and that want to be high priests together with you are all going to bring incense tomorrow morning to the temple, and Aaron's also going to be there. He who brings the incense and God accepts their incense, will be the ones that is correct, and the ones who don't, who die basically. Well, it doesn't say who die. Those who are not are gonna.
But it'll be clear. Yeah.
It'll be very clear. Yeah.
And also, like, do we know how it looks when Hashem accepts the incense?
1 second. Yeah.
Okay.
The smoke goes up straight. They don't die.
They don't die.
They don't die is usually an important thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Moshe talks also to Dasan and Aviram separately. And he tells them, like, why, what are you doing? Why are you fighting against me? And they basically are upset. This is where you can see that it's kind of a result of the most recent episode. This is where they say, not only have you not taken us to the land of milk and honey, you've taken us out of the land of milk and honey to die in the desert. So they're upset. And the reason, some people, this is one of the reasons why, the simple explanation as to why it happens specifically now. Because Korach is arguing about the establishment of the priesthood of Aaron and his cousin, and not the rest of the Jewish people, and what happens to the Levites and why the Levites in charge. Theoretically, that happened already a while back. It happened at least 6 months before, maybe even a year before. Aaron becomes the high priest. He's raised separate from the Jewish people to give you the Torah. He's unique. He's special. He becomes the high priest in practice before Passover. So there had been already time that had passed. Why is Korach suddenly showing up right now? So you could argue that he just didn't have time.
Or that it was a slow burn anger.
Or that now he felt he had people to go with him, because now everyone knows they're going to die in the desert. And so he's like, well, what a better opportunity is there?
Yeah.
Because everyone's going to be upset.
Wow.
Okay. So he goes, and then Moshe goes and says, I never took any money from you. Don't be upset at me. God is the one who basically put me in charge because he wanted to be for whatever reason he wanted. But tomorrow morning we're going to have this competition. Brings the people together. and they go in front of the tent of meeting. The entire Jewish people show up because Korach spent the entire night visiting camp after camp, going through the entire nation. I'm fighting this for you, and this is the masses fighting against our dogmatic leadership who are out to get us, and they want to kill us in the desert. Your children are going to survive, and you're going to die. Tomorrow, we're going to show them who's right. So everybody shows up the next morning. Everyone shows up. Hashem is upset. God's upset. He says, I want to kill everybody. Which is an interesting response.
Yeah.
And Moshe and Aaron, of course, they fall on their face. And they pray. And they say, don't.
Yeah.
Don't do that. How could you kill one person? How can you kill everybody because one person is rabble rousing? You can't.
Very
no collective punishment. They argue the idea of collective punishment, which is fascinating. I think this is one of the first places where you see it. I mean, Avram also argues the same question. Where he says with Sdom, he says, what collective punishment? You can't kill the righteous.
He brings up Sdom?
No. Avram has the same argument then.
Yeah.
Right. And Moshe has the same argument here. He says one person's gonna sin and then everyone's gonna die. It's not fair.
Yeah.
So Korach is a kach left, as we say Yiddish.
But how many? So Korach is able at this point to rally much more than the 250 he initialed. Okay.
Everyone's around watching and seeing like what's gonna happen. How's it gonna go down?
Oh,
so
it is a little funny though. The people showing up and God's like, they're all dead.
Yeah, the whole thing is like
that's it.
That's it. Enough is enough. These people, but also think about it. The Jewish people are literally living on God's dime the entire time. They're living in
100%
in God's presence directly.
Something we keep on bringing up, like just out of slavery, the manna,
Torah, splitting of the sea, everything.
Yeah.
I think a better word, or not a better, but a equally valid description of this book of the Torah would be the book of the rebellions. Interesting. Right?
Yeah.
Because you have it in not Ba'alotcha, Shlach, Korach, Chukat. The four core parashiot.
It's basically
rebellion after rebellion.
And Moshe going to bat for them each time.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. But in this case, there's a story. Okay. What happens? So Moshe he goes to Datan and Aviram, and he tries to convince them to repent.
They're Korach's guys.
Yeah, but they're not at the tent. Or at least they're not explicitly at the front of the tent of meeting. So Moshe travels to them, which means he walks whatever it was, it's like a mile. And he goes to see them and to try to convince them to repent. And like, what are you guys doing? Like, you know that I didn't do anything because God told me to. Besides what God told me to do, and this is not your thing. So then he tells them, and they come out of their tents, and they stand there brazenly. They're like, we're not going to repent. We think you're wrong. We think everything's just like very chutzpah.
Wow.
And then Moshe tells the people, he says, everyone, if you don't want to be included in their sin, step away. Basically, stand with them or stand away from them.
Yeah.
If you're with them, you're with them. If you're away from them, you're away from them. Everyone leaves them. And they're left. It's just Datan and Aviram, their wives, their kids.
So not even Korach.
Korach is still in front of the Oil Moed, and they're offering incense. They're trying to do this. Where Aaron is, I'm not sure. I believe he was still in front of the tent. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they were preparing to offer the incense. They were lighting it off. They were trying to get it to go. They were lighting it up.
So already, even before this whole thing happens, Datan and Aviram, they go.
So, well, 1 second. So they go as like they leave from the area.
No, they get.
Oh, no. 1 second. So then, Moshe says, listen. He tells the people. He says, if anything, if you want to know, did God choose me or not? These men will die in a unique way, in a way that you've never seen before. God's going to create a new death to prove that I am correct and that everything I have done is the word of God. Every single thing, including making Aaron the head, including making my nephews the heads of their own specific groups within the Levi tribe. Every single position that I put in place has been God's word. How will you know? Because
New way
God's
to
going to
die.
create a new thing. The ground's going to open up, swallow.
He says that.
Yes. He says very explicitly, if God opens the ground and eats them alive, and they will go down alive to She'olah, which nowadays we translate that as hell, Gehenna.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't say that. It's not the direct translation. They're going to go into the earth. Then you know that God sent me. And if not, then I'm a fraud. And I'm okay being a fraud, basically. And what happens? As soon as he finishes talking, the ground opens up. And they and their stuff and their kids and all their items that they own is swallowed up. And they're ground alive into the grave. At the exact same moment that happens, a fire comes down from heaven, burns the 250 men that were offering the incense. At the exact same moment.
Mic drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Korach, according to the Medrash, gets both. He is hit with the heavenly fire and he is burning.
While he's in front of the oil.
Yeah, he's hit with the heavenly fire and then he rolls over to the... It wasn't just like an opening of the ground. It was like a suction.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that they owned also, the Medrash tells us, was also swallowed up on the ground with them and their stuff. So if someone had borrowed a rolling pin, it was magnetically drawn into this pit. The Jews run and they freak out. They're like, it's going to swallow us up too. But it doesn't. It closes up. That's it. Done. Violent.
Very. And this is how the Parsha starts.
And this is how the Parashat starts.
Off with a bang.
Strong. Now,
Very.
immediately afterwards, God tells Moshe to tell Elazar, because the people had offered the incense, had offered it as a sacrifice to God, they had not offered it as a sacrifice to themselves. It wasn't idol worship. So technically the incense pans are holy. Collect the 250 incense pans, hammer it into a new cover for the altar. So that you should know that you don't rebel against God. So from then on, for the rest of the 40 years they were in the desert, there was this cover on the altar. Even later when they went into Israel, there was this copper cover, hammered out copper cover, that had been made by the victims or the people who had tried to challenge Moses.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a reminder, to read directly, it's a reminder that no one should ever try to offer incense. That was not commanded, like Korach and his people.
Wow.
And then, of course, the Jewish people immediately freak out. They're upset. And they're like, look, the incense keeps killing people. Moshe knew that if he challenged them with the incense, they're going to die. So, immediately, Hashem's upset. And he says, well, I guess I'm going to have to destroy them. Again.
All of them.
Yeah, just the people who complain. Not everyone. Those who complain.
The kvetchers.
Kvetchers. So, Moshe realizes, Hashem sends a plague. So Moshe realizes this is a opportunity to use a secret that he had been told by the angel of death when he was on the mountain. One of the things that Moshe had when he was on the mountain is a lot of the angels that were there gave him gifts. And one of the angel of death gave him a gift when he was up on the mountain to receive the Torah from God. He spoke to the angels and he was there for 40 days. So every angel gave him a different gift. The angel of death gave him a gift and told him that you should know the incense has a power to stop me. Moshe runs to Aaron. He says, quickly, light up an incense pan and go stand and walk between those who are living and those who are dying. Walk in the camp. And that will cause the angel of death to stop killing people. So the way it says it in the Chumash is that, and the plague stopped. The Medrash tells us that what happened with the angel of death stops, sees Aaron coming, with the thing, and he confronts him and he says, I have no power when you light the incense, but God sent me to kill the people. What are you doing? And Aaron says, well, we both know that Moses doesn't tell us to do anything unless God told him to. So, you know what?
Sounds like you have new orders.
Come with me. let's go find out. Let's go talk to Moses. They go to the tent of meeting where Moshe is praying for the Jewish people, and they ask, and God says, the plague's over. Well, we'll stop it here.
Yeah.
14,700 people died.
Wow. How do they say the number? Is it Arba v'asara revava?
והיו המתים במגפה 14,700. Besides for the 250 and the families of those people.
So just under 15,000.
Yeah. The text actually says, and Aaron ran back to Moshe to the opening of the tent of meeting of the Mishkan, and that's when it stopped because he took the angel of death. They had a conversation with God to find out, who's right, who's wrong, that kind of thing.
Wow.
Okay, so first of all, the first question to think about is, why is Korach asking this question now? So I said earlier that there's a bunch of different opinions as to what triggered it off.
Well, I feel like so something I try to do when I'm hearing a story from the Tanakh, whether it's the first time or the 20th, is I try to because when we read it, especially in the biblical Hebrew, it sounds like this tale. It's like, well, what were they going through? When I hear it, this is the example that I always give. It's like Yeravam and Rechavam. The kingdom of Israel is about to split. What were his policies? What was he selling the people that made them want to follow him? So I feel like,
well, in that case, it actually says
what Yeravam was selling.
Yeah.
What was he selling?
He was selling them an easier time. He said, "I'm going to lower your taxes, make the gas."
He
prices,
says that.
Yeah, I'll make gas prices cheaper.
Exactly.
He says, the economy is stupid.
Yeah.
And Rechavam, the Jews come to Rechavam and they say, what are you going to do? Are you going to continue the tax? Because it seems like King Solomon had a very high taxation level, and he also had a lot of prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
But the Jews were tired.
Yeah. At
least from the text of Tanakh, it seems like that.
That's interesting.
And so they come to him and they say, what are you going to do? So Rechavam goes to his father's advisors, and he says, what should I tell them? And he says, you're a new king. You lower taxes and you ease into it. You show them that you care for them. If you need to later, you can raise it up and really kind of bring things back to regular order. But as a new king, don't be an idiot. And he's like, oh, let me ask my friends what they say. And he asks his friends, and his friends say, tell them that my father whipped you like this, and I'm going to whip you double as much. And he took half tax, I'm going to take double taxes.
Yeah,
he's very, very whatever. The Jewish people are like, okay, it was nice knowing you. Goodbye.
Yeah. So in this situation, I guess my question is, or not my question, what I would have to assume, on a like the human emotion is they just got given a sentence last parsha. It's like, you're all gonna die in this desert. That promise, your kids are gonna see it fulfilled. You're not.
Right.
And that's as good a reason to be cranky if there was one.
Kind of.
It's it's a big blow.
Kind of because the Jewish people were living in a great time.
Yeah.
It's like you're on vacation and you're like, you have to go home and get back to work. And then someone tells you, no, you're going to live out your rest of your life on vacation with all your best friends and your family. And your children, they're going to get back to go home.
Yeah.
They're going to inherit
also the
your house and
your
your
purpose. Land. They were promised not only the land of milk and honey, but the being a nation and doing what we're put on this earth to do. We spoke about this in a different parsha where it was one of the things they were cranky about because they're like, it'd be awesome to stay here and be on vacation. But going back to real life, there's also now we can fulfill ourselves.
Yeah, but I don't know if there'd be... See, that's what I don't fully understand. I don't fully agree, I don't think.
Mm.
In other words, if God tells you your purpose is done, your purpose of going into the world to do your thing is finished. So then that's it. You're happy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I understand why they were cranky though, because they weren't thinking about it that way. They were thinking about it this hurts. We just got the punishment.
Fair.
And I don't have kids yet, but I imagine that if you had kids that were to every once in a while act out, and you're doing the right thing by disciplining them, and by disciplining that can mean a bunch of different things, but even if you were to sit your son down Be like, hey, you did this. That means that you can't A, B, and C. He's not hearing that this is for your benefit so that you can grow as a person. He's hearing, I've just been limited.
Yeah, again, I agree with you if the conversation isn't such a big conversation. Like we're talking here about a generational promise.
Yeah.
Some of the people had been born, and when I say some, I mean like very few had been alive when the Jews came into Egypt. Like Sarach, there's a few people that we know like live very, very long lives. For the most part, all these Jews are second or third generation born into exile.
Yeah.
Right, Korach, Moshe.
Yeah.
Moshe was born in Egypt. Yeah. His father was born in Egypt. His mother's a whole story. She was a little older.
His grandfather was born in Egypt.
His grandfather,
Kehat was born in Egypt.
Yeah. Well, I have to check that up. I have to actually look at that.
Okay.
Because there was some people who were born before they came into Egypt. It wasn't that long. It was 210 years. So it wasn't like it was a huge.
Yeah.
But like, so Moshe, his parents, like, there were definitely a few generations of being in Egypt. So knowing they came, you're the ones who the destiny is, you're going to be taken out of Egypt. You're going to be the ones who go into the promised land. Initially, you can be like, we're the ones who are going to do everything. And then eventually, it's like, you're going to be the ones who did half the story. And the next half of the story is going to be your kids who you see in front of you. It's like not such a shocking, it's shocking, but it's not like on a generational narrative. It isn't such like a crazy concept. And you get to have manna every day. And you get to have water for the well of Miriam every day. Yeah, and you get to hang out with.
I do agree with
situation. So it's and again, if their thought was we're not fulfilling our purpose, right? The challenge that people have when they're on vacation is that after a few days on vacation, you become very antsy sometimes because.
I don't think they were thinking to themselves, "Oh, we don't get to fulfill our purpose." I think they were thinking to themselves, "We just got a really painful slap on the wrist."
Right, which is why we mentioned last time that they actually tried to conquer Israel. They're on their own. They launched an attack, which failed. But yeah, I mean they're definitely salty. It's interesting that Korach. So there's many different interpretations. I'm going to go with the Hasidic interpretation because there's a lot of different ways you could read the story. One way of reading the story is that it was just a confrontation with Moshe. And essentially, one of the arguments is that there was one confrontation with Moshe over who's going to be the high priest. That was what Korach was interested in. And the 250 maybe also wanted to be high priests. And then you have Dasan and Aviram who are really upset with Moshe. They've always had this contentious relationship with him. And therefore, they were confronting Moshe as being like, you haven't fulfilled your promises, you're a bad leader, we hated you ever since. We've always been a thorn in your side for the last who knows how long. There's other stories in the Torah. It doesn't always say who they are, but the commentaries pin it back on Dasan and Aviram as being the ones who did it. Example would be the manna that was in the desert. There was some people who leave the manna overnight, one of the first nights that they get it, because Moshe says, eat the manna, finish it, whatever you don't finish, throw out. Tomorrow God's going to give you a new blessing. And they're the first people that they save the manna to see what happens, essentially. It becomes disgusting and rotted and just gross and full of worms. And it's them. They're the ones who did it. So they were always
track record.
Yeah, there's other stories as well, which it's a longer conversation. But so Moshe, so they were essentially fighting with Moshe over his leadership in general. They're like, why are you in charge? Maybe we should have a committee. Maybe we should have, I don't know, someone else. I don't know. And so that's also explains a little bit why Korach was offering the incense in front of the Mishkan with the 250. They were at their tents because they're like, you do your argument and whatever. Yeah. We're going to continue rabble rousing over here. We're going to keep, maybe we'll open our own camp. Because think about it. Theoretically, we know the story, we know the narrative, but it's always interesting to do historical novels where they're like, what if history went a different way, right? Theoretically, with no intervention from God, they would have grabbed 3 or 4 tribes, split off, go into the desert on their own, and maybe just go back to Egypt. Egypt was desolate. for the most part. They could have recaptured it, or taken a piece of it, or gone south, found oil,
Yeah.
opened up OPEC. Who knows? Have a good time. Who knows what could have happened, right? They could have wandered around. They could have gone towards Israel and tried to do their own. Obviously, we know Israel's very powerful because the last time, a month before, the Jewish people had already attempted. Maybe they would have gone east. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Become a Bedouin tribe. There's all these hypotheticals that could have happened. What ended up happening is that they get swallowed up in the earth because God is like, no, you're wrong, and that's it.
Yeah.
Chassidus has a very interesting take on this whole conversation. And that is, it really boils down. It goes back to to what the spies' mistake was. The spies had a mistake in that they thought that the key way to elevate godly energy in the world, or one of the key ways, was through spiritual energy, and through spiritual praying and studying, and doing a physical mitzvah. It's important, but it's not so important. God tells the Jewish people the mitzvah is the most important thing. How? Through the whole narrative of the spies. And he tells them the key is the actual mitzvah itself, the physical mitzvah. And this in general is a very big question that exists in, I think, Jewish conversations that I have with people in Jewish conversation, Jewish philosophy, Jewish practice. What is people say this about Judaism, that the main thing about Judaism, the main thing about Yiddishkeit, is that it's a action-based religion. It doesn't make a difference what you believe. It doesn't make a difference what you think. The main thing is you're fulfilling the mitzvah. Right?
Okay.
You have this in varying levels. Some groups of Jewish people say this is a very common thing in America today, which essentially says as long as you're fulfilling the traditions, generally speaking, you're doing stuff, you're fulfilling stuff, you're fine. So if you don't really believe in God, but you do Shabbat with your family, you'll pass it on to another generation. That's a good thing too, right? You do the Seder even if you don't necessarily believe in the Seder. Or you do the Seder even if you don't really know if Moses was a real person or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which obviously, we believe this all of us 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
But they're this is their way of saying, and this differentiates us from other religions that exist around us.
Yeah, I feel like that really hits home. I remember when I was in high school and I was really challenging my teachers, probably really for the sake of challenging my teachers, pretty rebellious kid. But I would ask them, is the Torah a history book? And they say, yes, but it doesn't matter if it is or it isn't. And they would say, there's a reason it's called Torah, which is not the Hebrew word for our history.
Correct.
Torah is when psychology is Torat HaMoach or Torat HaNefesh, the Torah the Torah of the soul, or the ways of the soul. Meaning it's a book of our ways, and it whether someone believes it is or isn't accurate history, that's not the point. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because I like the fact that there are rabbis that are not willing to die on the hill of, did this actually happen? Can we dig up the bones physically?
No, I'll obviously fight you on that.
No, I think that you first of all, I do believe it happened. So you don't have to fight me on anything. You'd probably win.
Right.
But I have definitely encountered plenty of rabbis who are very much of the Orthodox Zerem, meaning they're not Reformed, they are people who their entire life is dedicated to Torah in the very, very traditional sense. And the one, I forget what his name, Giora Rendler, I think his name is. He's a academic descendant of a Rav Kook. And he says, I don't know if it happened. It's not the point. That's his take. I don't know if it happened. Not the point.
It's interesting. There's some people who use the conversation of whether Torah is a book. Is it a book of history or a book of not? And, the whole point is that it's about this moral, ethical thing, and therefore whether it happened or not is not so important. I think the way we look at it is the other way around. Torah is truth.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that it says here happened literally as we read it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else comes afterwards, and we can have a conversation as to whether or not the rest of the world adjusts to fit with what the Torah has told us already is true.
The reason, by the way, I do believe it happened, because there are obviously a lot of uncertainties in my life, and obviously I also think that there may be things that are worded in a vague way in the Torah that may be translated differently today, and I don't know where to point. But one of the reasons that I just believe it happened, I was just like, yeah, I think it happened, is because we keep finding out things that predate the last archaeological find. And it's like, so where's the cutoff? So where does it go from actual history to myth?
Right.
Maybe it just actually happened, and now we can interpret what malach means. We can interpret what nivwa means, what it looks like, even though in some cases it even just says on the nose. It's like, and he spoke from between the two, like we spoke about this last week. So but even like in the vaguer places, we can be like, okay, well, maybe it didn't look exactly like this, even though like there are already scientists or rabbis who also have a background in science who are pointing out how Kriyat Yam Suf is possible. It's like, okay.
Although, I actually was thinking, I heard a class from one of the Kol Chabad rabbis. He went head to head with the scientist as to whether or not, because it was right after there was a time when there was like some documentaries that came out. They were like, oh, the 10 plagues are actually all natural, and like maybe the Moses miracle was
he was able to foresee.
He was able to predict the exact order and when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, etc.
That's where my logical mind goes.
I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of a miracle is that it pushes the boundaries of nature.
Mm-hmm.
If the 10 plagues were just to show that God has predictive power over the universe, then a natural explanation for the 10 plagues, with Moses being an expert predictor, is good enough. But I don't think we understand it that way. The 10 plagues is about God's dominance over nature.
Yeah.
And therefore, in each plague, if you go down to, first of all, the Chumash itself speaks about this. Once you go into the oral tradition, you get into like what actually happened in each of the plagues. Some of the plagues were multi-layered. Like the plague of frogs. There's like parts of the plague of frogs. There was one gigantic frog that comes out and begins spitting out layers and layers of smaller frogs. And by the way, you find that in science today. So you have this idea that father frogs will incubate, thousands of babies in their mouth. Whatever. This is like, so you see
the
echoes
first ever babushka frog doll.
Yeah, exactly. You keep hitting it, it keeps popping out more. But there was like layers and layers. Like they penetrate into the homes. They go into their dough. And they go into the ovens. And then it's just the frogs. They have lice. And each of these, the whole purpose of the plagues was not to be like, show Pharaoh that he should be scared of God enough to let the Jews go. It was a comprehensive thing to explain to the Jewish people, to Pharaoh,
to the world,
to us today, the level of power and the level of dominance God has over nature.
Mm-hmm.
So the minute that you start to find like, oh, maybe it happened this way. No.
You don't like that.
I'll reject all of it. No, the whole point is that you can't explain it.
Like
The minute you can explain it, it's not a miracle in the way. Sometimes a miracle comes because you've reached the edge of your explanation. Oh, it's so serendipitous. It's so amazing. It must be a miracle, right? And sometimes a miracle is because it's something that is physically impossible to happen that happens.
Yeah. Those
are very different things. And if you can explain it after the fact, I don't think that uncovers it fully. Agreed. So, like for example, this opening up of Korach, the thing on his feet.
Maybe there
could have been an earthquake.
Quicksand.
Quicksand, an earthquake. It opens up. It swallows them up. It just happens to only hit those people, nobody else. Moses predicted it perfectly.
And the fire from the sky, well, it's a phenomenon.
With earthquakes, usually have lightning. I don't know, whatever. No, not to me at least. And I don't think that is. I think that steals the thunder of the spiritual experience of what happened. But coming back to the conversation of this idea of and this I think is the underlying kind of conversation that exists. This is the Torah portion which covers this idea. The balancing between the two layers of kavanah, or the idea of intent, and thought and action in doing something. Right. So we say that Judaism is a religion of action, action-based religion. So, like I said earlier, most people take this to be that it's a religion that even if you don't believe so much, as long as you do it, you're doing the religion, you're doing the Judaism thing. And therefore, you don't have to believe, you don't have to think too much, and you don't have to worry about whether it's faith, again, in contrast to other spiritual, other paths that exist where they emphasize only faith. They don't emphasize any action or very little action. As long as you believe, you're going to be saved. As long as you believe, you're going to be fine. Judaism goes in a different direction completely and says you have to do action. Okay. The reality is that Judaism requires both. Primarily action, interlaced or intertwined with
Kavana.
an intentional intent. Sometimes that intent is a lower level intent, just to know that you're doing the mitzvah. You're fulfilling God's word or doing a good deed that is meant to be. And then you have a higher level, which is actually understanding what you're doing and what you're fulfilling through doing the mitzvah. Right? There's only one mitzvah that I can think of that if you're not aware that you are fulfilling a mitzvah, you still fulfill the mitzvah.
What is it?
Eating matzah on Passover.
Still did it.
If you don't know that you're eating matzah, and you happen to eat matzah on the first night of Passover, you have fulfilled the mitzvah.
Okay, meaning you have to be aware, but it doesn't have to be like I'll take a different example. Like if kibud avayim,
Sure.
the respecting of your parents. If your dad says something and you agree with it, so you happen to do it, it's not kibud avayim.
No, it's a separate conversation. Your question is, does it have to go against your grain?
No, I'm not asking if it has to go against my grain. What I'm asking is, in the mitzvah, do I have to have in mind that I'm doing a mitzvah in order for it to be a mitzvah? Because we're looking at kibud avayim.
Does that have to be a conscious thought?
Does it have to be I am now fulfilling the mitzvah of kibud avayim? Because there are things like when I put on tefillin in the morning.
That feels like a mitzvah.
I'm going an yotzeh megidri. I'm going out of my way
Right.
to fulfill a mitzvah.
Right.
I can repurpose those 5-10 minutes to other things, probably much less meaningful things, probably a lot more comfortable things, but I'm doing it. So that's a great example of something like unless someone were to wrap me while I took a nap in the middle of the day between
No.
like I can't see that
Right.
happening without me having the idea, but there are a bunch of other things that are mitzvahs that might just happen. Like eating cracker happens to be Passover.
Right.
You know? So my question is, if I just kind of like shrug my way into giving tzedakah, if I drop a penny accidentally into a homeless person's cup, did I give tzedakah?
What if you lose money and a poor person finds it?
Did I?
What if?
So what if? Is
Mitzvah.
that tzedakah?
Yeah.
Mitzvah?
Yeah.
I'll take it.
There's one mitzvah that you have to do, behesach hadas, so you do a mitzvah without knowledge, anti-knowledge, which is the mitzvah of forgetting a sheaf.
Yeah, of lashon hara.
No, if you have bundles of wheat, you're harvesting your field.
Mm-hmm.
You're gathering everything. You bring it all back to your granary,
Mm-hmm.
and if you forget 2 or 3. I'm thinking 1 or 2 or 2 or 3. There's a limit to how many. At some point, it becomes more than you haven't forgotten it. You just haven't gone back yet, essentially. But if you forget 1 or 2 bundles, then you leave it there for the poor, and the poor are able to take it for free. It's theirs. It's part of there's 4 or 5 different things that you do as part of helping the poor people when you're during a harvest.
My mind is going to the story of Ruth and Boaz.
So her whole story
She was collecting.
is she was collecting
left.
leket.
Yeah, isn't that what you're describing?
No, leket is leket shikrampeh. Leket is while they're cutting.
Mm-hmm.
If 2 or 3 stalks fall,
the poor can come and
You have to
collect it.
leave it, and the poor can come and gather.
Mhm.
And in fact, there were so many people that were doing this. There were usually more than one round that people would come through.
Mhm.
So someone would go through right behind. So they would be doing it. It was literally 10 feet behind them, waiting to go, and they would collect.
Like the
Then there would be
Bedouins in
people who
the
would come
army.
later. What?
It's like the Bedouins when we were in the Israeli army. So there's like very strict. Like here in the States, if someone gets close to a military training, like you're getting shot.
Right.
You are.
Right.
White, black, doesn't matter what you look like, has nothing to do with that. You are not to get close to a military training base. Because the political climate in Israel is so tense, the laws of engagement are so strict that, and the Bedouins in Israel have clearly caught wind of this because this is what they do. We'll be doing a drill, and we'll be running forward and shooting, and literally they'll be standing on their like dune buggies, and they'll be right behind us collecting all the brass from the rounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's valuable.
They sell it,
Ha!
and we're supposed to collect it. So like when I was in basic training, I was happy because it's like I don't have to collect it.
Right.
But then when I was a commander, and it wasn't my back and knees that were gonna be hurt collecting it, I was like, oh wow, that's like super illegal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And you're not allowed to do anything. They know it. They'll just come.
You
anyways.
can't. You can try stopping them. You can scream at them. But you can't do anything to them.
Scream at them.
Right.
That's how they speak.
That's funny. That's very funny. Wow. Okay. So it's a very similar concept.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Okay, so that's leket though. Shikha is the next stage. There's 3.
Okay.
Leket, shikha, peah. Peah is where you leave a corner of
Where
your
you leave,
field.
yeah. That I
And
remember.
there's no number how much it's supposed to be. You can leave however much you want.
Mhm.
Depends on how good the yield was. Depends on how big your field is. How many fields you
And
have.
shichacha is basically
You forgot.
when you forgot.
Shachachta.
Yeah.
What you forgot.
Okay.
Okay, there's actually a famous story from the Medrash where a guy forgets a sheaf, and his kid sees it, and he comes running to his father, and he says, "Father, you forgot a bundle." He says, "What?" He says, "You forgot a bundle in the field." He says, "Finally!" And he gets to dance, and he says, "My son, quickly take the goat. We're going to Jerusalem." He says, "Why?" He's like, "Don't you realize?" He says, "Realize who?" He says, I've been
trying my whole life.
I've been trying my whole life to fulfill this mitzvah. What's the word? I've been gleaning my. I've been gleaning. I've been harvesting every single time. That's not the word I'm looking for. I've been harvesting year after year. I never forget a bundle. Never in my life. Finally, I forgot a bundle. I fulfilled the mitzvah. I've been trying to fulfill my entire life.
Only in Judaism.
So he runs to Jerusalem to offer a sacrifice to thank Hashem for making him forget
Wow.
the sheaf. I love it.
Perfect.
So, generally speaking, a mitzvah has to be something which you do with some level of knowledge that it is a mitzvah. Your conversation that you bring up, something which I don't think we're going to get into right now, which is there's a question about which level. Maybe we'll do it in the next week's episode, where there's a conversation to be had about there's 3 kinds of mitzvahs in general: mitzvahs that you understand, mitzvahs that you don't understand, and mitzvahs that are, once it was established by God, now they kind of make sense to us. The 3 categories essentially are mitzvahs that are completely logical, like tzedakah, honoring your parents falls in the category, but basics like thou shalt not kill, don't steal, if you find a lost object, return it to its owners, a whole bunch of stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
All the stuff that just makes sense, right? Then you have a whole separate cadre of mitzvot, which is mitzvot that do not make any sense.
Paraduma,
which is next week, exactly, called the chukot, the statutes. In the Torah, a lot of times that's conversation about different mitzvot. It says there's mishpatim, my judgments, and you have edot, the witnessing, and then you have chukim, which is the statutes, which essentially they're categorized in 3 separate categories. And the chukim are the ones which don't make any sense, which therefore you feel super, super connected to God when you fulfill them. Tefillin lands in the middle category.
I feel like it doesn't make sense in a good way.
I think there's aspects of every mitzvah that are chukim. So this is where the conversation gets kind of very interesting and convoluted. But just as a general rule, the middle mitzvot, they're not mitzvot that you would have invented on our own.
Mm-hmm.
But once you have, they're essentially all the holidays.
Mm-hmm.
This holiday, Passover is a great example. Had God not given us a mitzvah to offer a sacrifice and not to make a seder and the whole thing for Passover, would we have done it on our own? I don't know if we would have done it the exact same way. But now that God gave it to us, it makes so much sense. This is the day that we came out of Egypt. That was the birth of our nation. Of course, we should have a huge celebration, very, very focal to the entire Jewish experience. Of course, we're going to have a mitzvah like that. Tefillin Shabbat is another great example that falls in that category, right? Depending on which interpretation you're going with. When I say different interpretation, is it in the Ten Commandments or is it in the Ten Commandments? Because they have both narratives of why do we do Shabbat, is either because God created the world in 6 days, rest on the seventh, so we're going to rest on the seventh, or because God took us out of Egypt and said, till now you were slaves, you didn't have a day off. Now you work for me, I give you days off. So it's another way of connecting to going out of Egypt.
What you just did was the reason I wanted to do this podcast. That's exactly why. Thank you.
So that Shabbat, there's two reasons for Shabbat. Like I said, they're in the Ten Commandments, both of them, but not in the same Ten Commandments. Anyways, so it's coming, but that's a mitzvah that establishes it's a day to remember something that happened, or a day to focus on a theme that we want to think about. So when you do it, you're connecting to a very specific theme. Not a general theme of I listen to God because it's a good idea to do so, right? For example, if kosher is why do we eat kosher? There's a lot of different reasons that are given, but the general way that everyone talks about it is either like, oh, it's a health thing and therefore we don't have to do it today, which is bunk, or it's God said so and we don't really know the reason why, which is Na'aseh v'nishma. And therefore, every time you reject food that isn't kosher, every time you go specifically to search out food that is kosher, in that moment, you are saying, I am Jewish, and I have a special diet, and it is there to remind me that I'm Jewish. That's it.
That's
which is what tefillin does for you because you're not used to doing it, even though there isn't meditation for tefillin.
Yeah.
There's a daily meditation to meditate on what it says in the tefillin, that God took us out of Egypt. There is only one God, and God took us out of Egypt. Therefore, we remind ourselves that God has power in the universe. It is one, and our job is, as the Code of Jewish Law says, it makes sense. If God has all this power, you probably want to listen to him. Literally says those words. It's a good thing. It's a good thing to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt.
Wow.
But if you don't put on tefillin with that meditation in mind, so it could be like this narrative meditation involved. If you don't have that meditation in mind, you're just putting on tefillin because I'm a Jewish person, I put on tefillin. You're doing it right. And it has the power where it pushes against your natural tendency to waste time in the morning.
I feel like it opens my antennas.
Yeah, well, that's the spiritual thing. Every mitzvah has a spiritual side, a Kabbalistic side to it that opens up a whole separate conversation. Okay. Korach, coming back to Korach now, because we're talking here about this balance between intent or kavanah and action. Korach is coming out of the spies. The spy episode says the most important thing is that you do the actual mitzvah, the actual action. That's why you have to go into the land of Israel. The fact they're going to meditate in the desert for I don't know how long, and pray to God and hear the Torah from Moses. Not enough. You have to go fulfill the actual mitzvah. The physical mitzvah is the place where God has commanded us. Which, by the way, is a very powerful Kabbalistic concept, which is that God, where do you see the power or the connection to God is in the place that is the farthest from God. I think we may have mentioned this in one of the earlier conversations about the blending of the finite and the infinite energies of God.
Yeah.
If you believe that God is not infinite and not finite, then you're going to want to be able to connect to God both in the infinite, which feels more intuitive, and in the finite, in the place that seems less intuitive. It seems more distant from God.
Okay.
Because the further it is from God, and the more you connect to God there, that shows you that God really is not bound by any conventional rules.
Yeah.
Right? So it makes sense to say that the most mitzvah is the mitzvah that is the furthest from God. or in the language of we just said, what mitzvah feels the most mitzvah-like? It is the mitzvah that is the furthest from your logic.
Okay.
Right? Which is counterintuitive. If a mitzvah is about elevation and spiritual antennas and energy and all that, then the more energy you feel in a mitzvah, the more inspired you feel, the more it lines up with everything you've been doing spiritually.
Which is why I feel, unlike Tisha B'Av or Yom Kippur, that not eating fills me up spiritually.
On Tisha B'Av, not.
Fills me up spiritually.
You do like Tisha B'Av?
I love Tisha B'Av. It's a sad day, but I think it's the most important national day in Jewish calendar.
We've already discussed this for the record. I hate Tisha B'Av, yes.
You hate Tisha B'Av. No, it's a sad day.
It doesn't fill me up at all.
It's a sad day, but it fills me up the same way sitting Shiva for a close relative would fill me up. Is that I know with all my being that I'm commemorating this day in the most meaningful way.
I respect it.
You dislike it.
For me. It doesn't do it for me.
When we ever find ourselves in Israel at the same time, I'm taking you to Herodium for Tisha B'Av. You'll feel it.
That's the place to feel it.
You're gonna watch. You can see the Temple Mount from where Jews watch the temple burn. It's pretty powerful stuff. Pretty and you're gonna be around about 2,000 people with headlamps reading.
Yeah. Okay, I'll take you up on that offer one day.
Perfect.
Yeah. So Korach hears this conversation about the best place to show God's power is in the physical. The mitzvah that is the most mitzvah-like, that is
Sorry, say that again? I missed that.
Korach says, where do we have to do mitzvot? In the physical. The place that you have the greatest callback to the infinity of God's true infinity, which is not bound by anything, is specifically the place that feels like it's separate from God. And there you're going to do it in the action that is not bound by intellect, an action that is not inspired by divine emotion, right? Not praying ecstatically, not dancing and singing, but like putting on tefillin when you're not really interested, or eating matzah, you don't even know it's matzah, right? That's where God's fulfillment of God's desire. Because remember, what is the key of a mitzvah? The key of a mitzvah is the reason why it's so powerful. Mitzvah from the word command, and also the Zohar says it's from the Aramaic echo, tzavta, v'chibur. It's a connection. It connects us to God, because God is an infinite divine being, and God understands this. Obviously, knew that it'd be impossible for a human to bridge the gulf between us and the divine. Right? As much as we meditate ecstatically, at the end of the day, it could just be our own ego talking. It could be our own voices in our own head. How do we know it's real? How do we know we're real connecting to the divine? And especially if the divine really is truly way beyond everything we can conceptualize, there's no way for us to reach it across the gap. The only way that you can do that is if God gives us a command. It says, do this for me. Do this because I said so. Fulfill this desire. The metaphor brought in Chassidus, the metaphor brought in Jewish philosophy, is you have a great scientist in a room and he's working on some crazy mathematical function, some meditative thing. It's a whole, he's figuring out fusion or fusion reactor. We have fission, now we're on fusion. Where's the next big thing? He's figuring it out, or he's maybe building the next AI. I don't know. He's busy. He's very, very. And behind him, there's like some Joe Schmo. Yeah, just hanging out. Maybe a reporter taking pictures for some photo spread, or maybe whatever. There's no connection. Maybe it's somebody who doesn't even talk the same language, right? It's just a completely on a different level. A regular, or it's the janitor that's coming through and dusting and doing like a straightening out of the situation, right? No connection, not intellectually, language. They can't have any conversation of any type whatsoever. And then the scientist, the genius, gets thirsty. So he turns around and says, give me some water, if you don't mind. Yankel runs off, grabs some water, brings it back. Scientist thanks him, drinks it, goes back to doing his thing. That created a connection between the two. He asked for something, he gave him. Right? There's a whole conversation as to whether that the scientist this is a mashal, this is a metaphor. Does God need the water? Does God say he needs the water? He doesn't really need the water. Is he saying, I need you to put on tefillin? I want you to put on tefillin. There's a little bit of a nuance there as to whether God needs us to fulfill the mitzvah, or he wants us, or maybe he created within himself. He didn't need it, but he created a need, as if. So that way there could fulfill a need in God, therefore we can have the connection. Okay, there's a whole conversation about this. Not for now.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, there's a connection that was created because there was an expressed desire for something, it was fulfilled. That's what a mitzvah is.
Okay.
It creates a connection. Every mitzvah that we do binds us to God in that way. Some mitzvahs bind us longer, shorter, more intently, more intensely, in our minds, in our hearts, in our actions. Every mitzvah has its own way that it does that. The spies were like, as long as we're meditating and connect to God, we're connected to God. God says no. That's
Actions.
the actions are the thing. Fulfilling the mitzvahs, and specifically the physical mitzvahs, are the ones where you're going to have the real depth of connection that we're going to need. Okay, Korach says, if that's the case,
Just actions.
I've got some news for you. When I put on tefillin, and when Moses puts on tefillin, what's the difference?
The kavanah.
But kavanah makes no difference anymore.
Okay. That's what Korach says.
Yeah?
Basically.
So when I put on tefillin, Moses puts on tefillin, what's the difference? Nothing.
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 Meaning the difference between me and Moses is nothing.
Nothing. Not anymore. Till now, I respect. He's the greatest prophet. I'm Korach the Shmo. Or Korach, very, very wealthy, by the way. Incredibly wealthy.
Really?
Yeah. The Medrash tells us he was one of the 3 wealthiest people in history.
Korach.
Yep.
How do you accumulate wealth? In the desert.
He found, so Joseph took a lot of the wealth that he accumulated for Egypt and he buried it underground in these massive vaults. Korach found one of them. He split it up into multiple caches. Korach found one of them. Incredibly wealthy. Korach's a great guy.
Is that kosher, by the way?
What?
That he was that wealthy?
Depending on which medrash. Some people will tell you that's what caused him to go crazy.
Mm.
But I don't know. I don't know if that's... Wealth is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, we believe in wealth.
I heard...
For all the anti-Semites out there, we believe in wealth.
We believe in wealth. I heard...
Please, bring us the money.
My friend used to live in L.A., and he went to a synagogue, and he said that one Shabbat, one of the rabbis says that God wants us to drive Ferraris. I found that hilarious.
100%.
I found that hilarious. I found that not hilarious because it's like, I do believe that wealth is something to value as long as it doesn't consume you.
That's the hard part, right?
It's like, have your wealth, don't let your wealth have you. But the phrase Hashem wants us to have Ferraris is a great,
glorious. I'm so with it.
Yeah. I think God wants me to have nice guitars.
Hopefully the guitars are worth more than the Ferraris.
They will be.
With time. Yeah, that's a plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that wealth is something which is very, very powerful. And there's an old Hasidic saying that there are 3 things that change you. And if it didn't change you, it's because you haven't had enough of it. The 3 things are Chassidus, studying Chassidus, wealth, and alcohol. Chassidus makes you refined. Wealth makes you crazy. Alcohol makes you drunk.
Well said.
And so the idea essentially is you say, what do you mean? I know wealthy people who aren't crazy. It says they don't have enough.
Yeah.
They just don't have enough.
Yeah.
They haven't reached their threshold beyond which their brain shifts.
Yeah.
Now, I think that is, depending on who it is, that could also adjust over time.
Mm-hmm.
You can grow your tolerance for wealth. Someone who's incredibly destitute and suddenly becomes
they lose
incredibly wealthy, they lose their mind. But you have
Yeah.
somebody who grows it over time. That's why people who've built it up over time, it doesn't happen like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's certain people at a certain point you talk to them, and you're like, this guy is a little crazy.
Yeah, they're not on planet Earth.
They're not on the same planet as us.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's good.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's strange. Then you have the alcohol. Same thing. It gets you drunk. Why? If someone has a little alcohol, they're not drunk. Okay, they haven't had enough. Give them 3 more l'chaim's. But the key point is Chassidus makes you refined.
Yeah.
You study the Word of God.
But I'm not refined.
You're not refined. You haven't studied enough. Exactly.
Beautiful. So Korach, Korach basically his claim, and the reason it shows up now is because but you said that the kavanah is not what's important. If the actions are all that's important, then why is Moshe better than me? Because we're doing the same actions. Which is interesting because we spoke last week about one of the other episodes about the fact that there's one instance where we're all on the same plane, and that is a minion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Moshe or Korach could be the 10th of a minion.
Correct. So there is, which comes back to the essential core of a soul. Every soul is infinite.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because what is the response that God basically gives them through the story of Korach? It's complicated. It's interesting because the response is you're right, and we need both.
And I think the incense is a great example of that because it's like, I'm going to bring the incense. And it's like, no, you're not listening. Right? Is that it?
It's that. And again, God takes their fire pans afterwards and says it's holy, don't touch it.
Yeah.
So they did something right in that process. But what Korach is, what God is, the message of God, and I don't know if Dustin of really ties into that because they just get swallowed up. But the Korach theme of this is that God says, look, actions are the most important thing. And also, if you infuse the actions with intent, then it's going to be the full picture. Or another way to say this is now you're going to the other extreme and you're saying that inspiration and connection to God through meditation and through study and Torah has no value. Are you kidding me? You have to get closer to God. Just because your actions are super close to God, you can't be the worst person, and you're filling everything by the letter of the law. You haven't changed yourself. Those mitzvot are dark. Those mitzvot are dirty. Those mitzvot are not elevated. When you do a mitzvah with inspiration, you do a mitzvah with warmth. And by the way, this manifested itself, this idea of the mitzvah has to be done just the most, fulfill the mitzvah. It manifested as there are groups there are streams within Judaism, in the past mostly, not today as much, who was obsessed with doing everything, checklist, make sure everything is done correctly, but not inspired, not connected, not involved, and therefore it was devoid of warmth. It was very, very cold, and it was obsessed with this idea of like, did I do it right? Did I not do it right? It's just the physical mitzvah. You need both, basically. You need to have both this energy of, I have to make sure the mitzvahs are actually being done. It is not enough for me to be fully inspired, but just not do any of the actual mitzvot. But also, doing the actual mitzvot without filling yourself up with spiritual energy also isn't enough.
I think that they also feed into each other.
Yes.
Like, if you're inspired, you're going to be doing more mitzvahs. If you're doing more mitzvahs, you're going to be more inspired.
Yes. In Tanya, the first Chabad speaks about this in a different way, a different language. He talks about if you're inspired, it'll fuel you to do more closer to God, mitzvah to bring you close to God, and if you're in awe of God, it'll push you away from doing things that are against what God wants. So, your internal spiritual energies, where you are up to, will actually make a massive difference to how you actually fulfill the mitzvah practically and pragmatically.
Beautiful.
Okay, so that's how Korach's episode ends, and it ends off with a follow up to that is that two things. One is a crazy story which we're gonna retell, and then after that there's a section where basically it goes through all the mitzvot, all the things that God gives the priests. 24 gifts to reiterate that they are the recipients of the benefit, the generosity of the Jewish people. So they get a tithe, and they get the first cuts of wool, they get a whole bunch of different things, but also God reminds the Jewish people that, by the way, the priests are not going to get any inheritance of the land. So they're dependent on you. So God re-emphasizes that, by the way, there's
it's not that they're living here in luxury and they are essentially giving up on the haves
There's
of
a
the real
cost.
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to be them. Like you might, but like
They're not going to get wealthy
yeah.
by being a priest. They're going to end up having to spend time teaching the people and being involved with the people pragmatically because they want to be around to remind people to give them the gifts. I mean, it says one of the things the Mishnah talks about is about a kohen that goes out and hangs out at the granaries. It's looked at as like
Begging.
not so great. It's like it's like, well, it depends. It's different kinds. Just some of them they would go around. They would pick up their usual. They had people who gave to them specifically. Like that was like their thing. It's kind of like certain congregations and Chabad rabbis especially, where the community supports them because they believe in what they're doing. So in the Jewish world today, it's not institutionalized how much they give, how much people give, or how they support. But in theory, that is kind of the model almost, where it's like these people are going to be working for the community with the community, and the community supports them. It's just understood. In the old generation, my father tells me when he first moved out as a Chabad rabbi here in Austin, when he visited people, he didn't have to ask for support because it was like a known thing. The rabbi comes to visit, you give him a check. That way you could, I think that also led to a very interesting give and take. That it was also smaller donations, and it was more like based on when the rabbi came, but it also caused the rabbi to go visit people more often, which is a good thing. So it was an interesting kind of give and take, modern expression of that. But at the time of the Beis Hamikdash, the time of the temple, it was a real thing. The time of Israel was a very real thing, where people would go. And they would bring to the priest. Sometimes they would deliver it to the priest, and the priest would come to them and pick it up and things like that. These different gifts that they would get. That's how they survived. They didn't have their own agricultural
in a way
plot.
The priests in Israel, in a way, continued living the reality of man, where they were not allowed to accumulate.
Yeah. Well, yes and no, because they also there was a minimal amount that the Jewish people had to give.
The Maser.
There was 10%, there's Truma, and there's Maser, and Trumat Maser, and there's all the different things.
Okay.
So there was a income stream that was guaranteed. But it was
yeah, but they were basically at the grace / mercy of the people.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like that's a very elevated spiritual place to have to live and believe, and it's not simple. It's not easy.
And you could have just gone. You could go out and buy a field if you could save up enough money to buy a field. Yeah. And then after 50 years, went back.
The European land.
Went back to the original owners. And if you had enough money, you could rebuy it back or release it back, or went back to him and he kept it. Yeah. So it's interesting. It's very interesting.
So these are the laws that
So that's how the portion kind of ends off. That's the final. But there's one episode in the middle where God tells, and again, this is an example of a beautiful story that, because it's not the name of the Torah portion of the first episode, it can get lost in the scrub. And that is, God tells Moshe, he says, I don't want the Jews to think that basically the only way I'm going to prove that Aaron is the high priest is through negative experiences. I want to do a positive proof to show you that I chose Aaron specifically for who he is, that he should be the high priest, and his children after are going to be, they're going to inherit his
priesthood.
Not only his priesthood, but also his like tchunot, his character traits. He says, take one staff from every single tribe. 12 staffs. Right on each staff, it should be brought to you by the Nesi'im, the heads of each tribe. They're going to write the name of their tribe on the staff. Aaron is going to write his name on the staff of Levi. 13 staffs total. So it's 12 and the 13th from Aaron. You're going to put it in front of the ark in the Holy of Holies overnight. And tomorrow you're going to know who I chose. And so they do. They each give him a staff. He puts Aaron's staff in the middle. So that way it should not be closer, not be further. It should be like the one that was the farthest from the ark, had the special thing, or the closest one. And he comes the next morning, and look what we see. Aaron's staff had blossomed. Not only it had blossomed, it had grown buds, flowered. The flowers had fallen off, and it had ripened into almonds.
It says that.
Yeah,
Can you say it to me in
in the original.
Yeah.
You want to have just that line?
Yeah.
So, Vayanach Moshe et hamatot lifnei Hashem be'ohel ha'idut. Vayihi mimacharat. Vayavo Moshe el ohel ha'idut. V'hinei parach mate Aharon lebet Levi. Vayetze perach. V'yatzet tzitz vayigmol shkedim.
This is incredible. It's so. I love the way it's written, but like it's just like it's such an incredible story.
Beautiful.
Such an incredible story.
And the idea is that, first of all, God chose him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mystical stuff that are attached to this, which is very, very interesting. The fact that it was almonds is because almonds ripen very quickly. So theoretically, it was almost natural, because it was the fastest type of fruit that could ever be blossom off a staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, that never happens overnight, but that's details.
Details.
Right. and then Moshe takes out all the staffs. He takes out all, and he shows them Aaron's staff had blossomed. He brings out the flowers as well. So he collects them off the ground and brings them out. He says, "Look, your staffs. Each of you take your own staff. Aaron, take your staff." So they all find their staffs, and sure enough, all their staffs are regular, and his looks a little different.
Yeah.
He shows them the flowers. He says, look what happened. God chose him specifically. And then God tells him, take the staff and put it in front. It stays in the temple, in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle forever, as a sign that God chose the Kohanim, the priests, to be the ones who are going to serve him. And that's it.
Beautiful. Is that a wrap?
Yeah, that's a wrap. That's that there's, like I said, the rest of the Torah portion is gifts to the high priests, to the priests. Just making sure there's nothing else at the end that we didn't forget. And that is it. So the theme of Korach, to wrap it up in one kind of succinct concept, is this a Torah portion which very clearly is emphasizing the special place of the priests in relation to the Jewish people, specifically Aaron as his place in relation to the Jewish people, and it also separately or relatedly emphasizes the conversation of intention and action, and how that the critical key parts to do both. And that there's a relationship between the two. Obviously, action is critical, which is why that episode comes first, to emphasize that action is critically important, and then the intention comes after. You must have intention as well, and it elevates and inspires.
Beautiful.
Amazing. High energy.
Parashat Korach.
Parashat Korach.
Well done.